Molly Jean. Today we're going to be diving into Matthew 26. I closed my Bible, so I was going the wrong way in here. I got a little toothpaste on me, so I was trying to brush my teeth. It's always funny how that happens. I don't know how that occurs. But as we've been talking about in the last couple of chapters, we are seeing Jesus focus on specific topics as we are getting nearer and nearer to his death and resurrection. So this chapter is pretty long, so stick with me, okay? Because look, here is where it starts, and it goes all the way over here. So it's pretty long. If I find a natural place to kind of split it in half, I definitely will. But just follow along. It's good for us to be able to read through long portions of scripture. Okay? Okay. Let's get started. English Standard Version, starting in verse 1 of chapter 26. Okay. When Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people." Now when Jesus was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he reclined at table. And when the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, "Why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare for my burial. Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from the moment he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now on the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them. They prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he reclined at table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him, one after another, "Is it I, Lord?" He answered, He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born. Judas would betray him, answered, Judas, who would betray him, answered, "Is it I, Rabbi?" He said to him, "You have said so." Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." All the disciples said the same. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." We'll stop there. I don't really think that that's half. There are 75 verses, so it's pretty close. So we're hearing the story of the beginning of the end, of the crucifixion, the beginning of the crucifixion portion. And I find it really interesting that Judas says, "Am I going to betray you?" Even though it says that he was looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. And I bet you he just said it to make him sound like the others, because they were all asking, "Is it me? Is it me? Is it me?" But the interesting thing is, Jesus says, "You will all fall away from me because of me. On this night, you will all fall away because of me." But the one that we remember, the one that we always talk about, the one that really always stands out is Peter, and how Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Excuse me. And as I read this, I know when we went through this in Luke, I was like, this is why you should not say things that you don't mean. But I have to omit that statement. I have to take it out. Scratch that. As I'm reading through this, verse 35, Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." He meant that. In that moment, he definitely 100% meant it. And when we read it through Luke, he meant it. He meant every word of it. He meant it. Peter is a man, or Simon, I should say. Simon is a man who acts out of his emotions. He reacts out of his emotions. And in that moment, he was like, "I will die for you. I will die with you. I will go to prison with you. Where you go, I will go." But when push came to shove, he wasn't responding out of the fruits of the Spirit. Because one of those fruits of the Spirit is faithfulness, right? And if he had been responding out of faithfulness, he wouldn't have denied Jesus, right? But at this time in Peter's life, he was reacting out of his emotions, and he meant every single word of that. He did. He meant every single word of it. But I think he got scared. I think when push came to shove, he was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I actually am ready to go to jail or die with you. I mean, what I said in Luke, we should always be careful of what we say, and we should mean what we say. That is what I was trying to get at. But I think I didn't say it right. I don't think I said it well enough, because Peter did mean every word he said. But we also need to be careful in this day and this age and our generation and our culture that we don't say things that we don't mean. Because with all of this recording and all of that, people will come back at you and be like, well, you said this. So we need to make sure that we are saying what we mean, you know, what we are actually going to stand by. And our actions should line up with our words. Okay? And all the disciples said the same. They all said, if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And again, I want to mention, so when Jesus goes and he is sorrowful and he is in agony, right? And he is on his face just, you know, having a time. And he says, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but you will. And again, he did not doubt that he was going to save you. He did not one moment think, this is too much. I can't go save them. He didn't think that. The reason he was so heartbroken, he was sorrowful even to death, because he was going to be away from the Father, his Father. And that is the reason he asked, if that cup can be taken away from me, if this can happen another way. Okay. But he knew it couldn't. And that is why he got up and he did what was needed for us to be with him forever. And when you know how much him and the Father, their relationship is so special, it's so intimate, it's so tight-knit, and then you see that he was willing to be separated from his Father and the Father from his Son in order for your life to be spared, it hits so much deeper. So let's go on. Verse 40, it says, and he came to his disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, so could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter in temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, for the second time he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, the one I kiss is the man, seize him. And he came up to Jesus at once and said, greetings, Rabbi, and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, Friend, do what you came to do. Then he came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hands and drew his sword and struck the servant on the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. And Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days." And the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, "I adjure you, by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his robe and said, "He has uttered blasphemy. What further witness do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?" Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus, with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you mean." And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him and said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out, weeping, and wept bitterly. So I want to make mention of something. All of them fled, right? In John, it says that, and I think also in Mark, but maybe just in John, that John and Peter both were following with Jesus, right? And the rest fled. They fled like an underage frat party, or a party where there's alcohol and there's underage people, and they just flee like you see in the movies. They fled. But Peter followed Jesus. He gets a really bad rap, but he followed Jesus when the others scattered. And I love that when they're in the garden, Jesus is still teaching them. He is still teaching them. Excuse me. He says that Excuse me. But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so? It says, and he's just so kind to us that even in those moments where there is so much uncertainty, they didn't know what was going to happen, right? They were probably scared for their lives. And he speaks. He speaks to them and is still teaching them, saying, like, this has to be fulfilled. And I just love that. I just love seeing that in the scripture. Just every moment, he's so intentional with them. He's so intentional with wanting them to know more and understand more and understand the purpose of why he came and what he was doing. And it's interesting to me that he stayed quiet. But they had already known what he had said. They already knew. And they were willing to put an innocent man to death for the sake of their righteousness, their own self-righteousness. Even so that they brought false witnesses. They knew what they were doing. And they did it anyway. And Peter wept bitterly. Peter knew what he had done was wrong, and he was sorrowful for what he had done. And I can't imagine sitting with that until Jesus came back and was sitting with them on the shore. I can't imagine sitting with that guilt that you denied Jesus. That must have been really hard for him. But it's a lesson to us. Don't speak words that you're going to be ashamed of later. If you think that those words that you're speaking out of your mouth in anger, in an argument, or when you're really hurt and you're really broken, he was speaking out of fear right there. He wasn't responding out of the fruits of the Spirit. He was reacting out of fear. So if we respond out of the fruits of the Spirit, we will respond out of faithfulness to Jesus. And I think that's a great place to land. And that's all I have for you today. This is Jesus and Jean podcast, and I am your host, Molly Jean, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.